using microservices in the middleware layer. Microservices is a very hot technology right now. Almost all the top companies, whether Uber, Netflix, they are all using microservices. It has a lot of advantages. This lesson gives a very brief description on microservices. It's mainly theoretical. I would suggest to go deeper on this topic by referring to different other sources online. Martin Fowler has a great website on microservices and shares many resources on them. So please check out on those resources. So what are microservices? Martin Fowler and James Lewis have given a very good definition for microservice, and it states that microservice is essentially a programming style in which individual functional units are programmed as separate services. So they are basically self-contained services, and they talk to each other using HTTP resource API. So the services can be separately scaled as they are deployed on their own infrastructure, and they can be separately brought down and brought up as needed. And so they can have separate releases without impacting other services. So it's a very new approach of doing or coding for the middleware layer. So what is the difference between microservice versus the monolith architecture style? So monolith is the traditional style where the entire code of an application is bundled into one single unit and deployed on a server. Microservice, however, breaks different functional units into separate chunks and deploys them. So this diagram explains the difference between microservices versus monolith. If you see on the left hand side, this code, entire code of the application, whether UI, backend, middleware, is sitting within one single unit and deployed on a server. However, in the case of microservice architecture, even though the UI code here is one, it can also be broken into multiple units though. The microservices depict the middleware layer and each has its own DB. An important point that can be mentioned here is all these microservices, since they are independent unit and deployed in their own infrastructure, they can be written in separate technology. So the first microservice can be a Java microservice, the second one can be Node.js, the first database can be Oracle DB, the second one can be MongoDB, and so on. So what are the problems of using a monolith architecture? First of all, every small change in the system requires you to deploy the entire code, and scalability has a problem that there are certain pieces in the app, for example contact us page, that might not be that for a banking website. If you have a contact us page, that not be that much used as the account details page or the statements page, right? But when you're scaling the app, you're scaling the entire code, you're scaling the contact us page along with it, even though the same page might be getting say few hits, or even though contact us might be a wrong example, but there are other pages in the app which might not require that many scalability features. And the last point is also key here. Any deployment requires regressive testing. No matter, even if you are fixing minor issues, minor defects, still you would require regression testing because you are touching an entire code base of the entire app. So how microservices fixes this issue? So individual units or self-contained units or microservices can be changed and tested and separately deployed without impacting the other running code. I can give an example here. Suppose you have a banking website where users can see their bank accounts details, right? So the bank account details, fetching information for all your accounts, deposit accounts, savings accounts, this can be a part of one microservice, right? Account detail microservice. And then there can be a separate microservice for statements that goes and fetches PDF statements or contains different criteria for fetching different type of statements, whether in Excel or in different formats, as well as search capability for searching based on date range. And then there can be another microservice that deals in transaction handling when you want to transfer money from one account to the other. Since this is not read-only data, this is like updates are happening. You can use transactions in this microservice and so on. So second key point is individual units or services can be scaled separately. So this is a key point. Suppose you have, in a banking website, there is a particular functionality that is not that much in use. For example, say tax forms, particular microservices depicting tax forms, you need them only once or twice a year, right? So not that many hits, so you can just have one or two instances of that microservice. However, a microservice like account details, as soon as somebody logs in into the banking website, you see the account details, right? So that kind of service is like people are using on a daily basis, so you need high scalability over there, so you can have multiple instances of this microservice and scale it more as compared to the other microservice. The last feature is the key, and why many startups are also using this. It's faster time to market. So if you want to code one feature into one particular microservice, it's much faster to change a smaller code base as one squad or one team. If it is agile team pattern, one small team owns one or two microservices, they can quickly make the change and deploy it in production. While if you are doing the same thing on a monolith, it will take a lot of time because it requires regression testing, so as to check you have not broken any other piece of existing code. However, there are certain problems with microservices. Microservices increase the complexity of the infrastructure. It is difficult to automate as lots of smaller pieces are there now, lots of smaller services are there now. Sometimes debugging errors in this distributed system of services is difficult. Maintaining the configuration also for all the components across various environments becomes difficult because there are too many runtime components now, and maintaining configurations for each of them is complex. So microservices in the real world, a lot of companies are using microservices nowadays. The usual architecture is container plus microservice plus cloud. So microservice is deployed on a container and the container is deployed on a cloud. The popular container to use is Docker, and apart from this, container orchestration tools or Kubernetes are then used to scale the microservice automatically. I would highly suggest to read more on this topic in the reference section, as a lot of companies are hiring on cloud technology, and a lot of them are building microservices on this cloud technology. So it's always good to read more on this topic because it's very current and it is a hot topic and currently in use. Thank you.